There are more than a dozen Democrats officially vying for the chance to take on President Trump in 2020, and we are joined now by one of them, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Thank you for joining us, Senator Klobuchar. I want to start with thank you. I want to start with the Justice Department saying they are going to release the Mueller report in the coming weeks. One thing we already know about the report, because it was directly quoted in Barr's letter, talking about the principal findings, is this. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. You obviously, I know, want to see the full report, but do you have any reason to doubt that principal conclusion, and that's the big one, that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians?
I want to see the report. All we have is a 4-page summary. And I think the major reason that we need to see the report right now, in addition to getting all the details, is to know what we should do to protect our elections and to protect our democracy going into 2020. In the report, they definitively, in the 4-page letter, Barr definitively said that we know that Russia tried to hack into our elections, they did hack into campaigns, that they spread propaganda, and that's, I guess, 300 to 400 pages of this that we need to see, because I want to pass my bill with Senator Langford, a bipartisan bill, to get backup paper ballots. I want to make sure we have audits of our elections. I want to hold those social media companies responsible so that they tell us what these ads are and tell us who's paying for them. These are all things we can do right now, and that report is going to be a major way that I can convince my colleagues to move ahead on security for our nation. And that part has not been discussed enough, because you've got a lot of things thrown at this report, yet you've got the public, over 80% of them in a poll just taken yesterday, that say that they want to see this full report. So I'm glad that they're going to release it. I hope they don't redact major portions that will stop us from being able to understand what happened.
Certainly much more to learn, but we do know directly from Mueller, his words quoted exactly, that he found no evidence of a conspiracy between members of the campaign or the president and the Russian government. I'm just asking, do you accept that conclusion? Fully understanding you want to see much more, but do you accept that conclusion from the special counsel?
Jonathan, I am a former prosecutor, and I believe in looking at evidence. I don't have the report. I think it is important that the Justice Department announce that they're going to give us the report, and then I can make that assessment myself. But I think the main thing here is the public wants to see the report. 420 members of the House of Representatives unanimously voted that they want to see the report. So then let's see the report. But I think the other thing you've seen, and I've seen being out there in Iowa, being in New Hampshire, being in South Carolina, and in Omaha this last weekend, is that people also are most alarmed not only by the chaos that we're seeing in our justice system, but what they're most alarmed about is the fact that just this week, the President's Justice Department announced that they're going to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which, contrary to what Mr. Mulvaney just said, means that people will be kicked off their insurance for pre-existing conditions. And while I do get random questions here and there about the Mueller report at town hall meetings, honestly, what I really hear about is economics and people concerned about the livelihood of their family, how they're going to pay for college, and most significantly, are they going to lose their health care?
Okay, so let's talk about health care. Nancy Pelosi came out with the House Democrats' plan to preserve and shore up the Affordable Care Act. I know you have a similar plan in the Senate, but Bernie Sanders had an interesting take on this idea of protecting and shoring up Obamacare.
Do you support the legislation the House produced today?
No, I support the Medicare for All single-payer program. Look,
wait, I just want to be clear. So you don't support that incremental reform?
No.
So what do you make of that, Senator Sanders saying he doesn't want to protect Obamacare?
I'm open to looking at Senator Sanders' proposal, but I am someone that wants to see immediate change and help people to afford their health care. So what I would suggest is, first of all, all-out opposition to the administration's plan to kick people off their health care. And then you see the Affordable Care Act as a beginning and not an end. So what can you do? Well, first of all, you can put in cost-sharing reinsurance immediately, which is shown in many states, including red states, to bring down premiums for people. Then, as president, I would immediately put in a public option proposal to Congress, and that could be for Medicaid or Medicare. But that is also a way to get to our goal of universal health care coverage. And then finally, pharmaceutical prices have skyrocketed. Simple drugs like insulin, diabetics not able to afford them because it's $1,200 a month for something that used to be $18 a vial. And so taking on the pharmaceutical companies by saying, you know what, no, you don't own Washington, even though you have 2 lobbyists for every member of Congress. You don't own Washington. And so I would make sure that we have negotiations for prices under Medicare, that we bring in less expensive drugs from places like Canada, and that we stop the practice where Big Pharma pays off their competitors to keep their products off the market.
You came out with a big plan on infrastructure. You said it is your top priority. Why infrastructure over health care or immigration or any of the other issues? Why infrastructure?
It is not infrastructure over health care, Jonathan. I've been out a lot on the campaign trail, as
yes.
you can see. It is not infrastructure over health care. We can do 2 things at once. And to me, infrastructure is an economic need. Infrastructure means things like making sure that we have drinking water that is safe in Flint. It means making sure those floods in Iowa, that we have a levee system that works and that we have protection for our farmers. It means a transit system that works. It means roads and bridges. We literally, right now, I am about a mile away from where that bridge fell down in the middle of the Mississippi River. That was because we weren't putting enough money into our infrastructure. And so this is an economic need for our country. The president has kept saying he wants to do something about it, but it's a mirage. He's never really put together the coalition or the funding to get it done. I have the funding. I've shown how I can get this plan done. And as president, I will get it done.
You want to raise the corporate tax rate, which the Republicans just cut. That might be a heavy lift. But let me ask you.
Let me look at what they did, Jonathan. They went down to 21%,
yep.
And every point, if even to put it at 25%, which is a significant decrease from where it was, we would bring in $400 billion to pay for roads and bridges and levees and schools. That's a lot of money. Or how about the way they did the overseas income, where they, instead of taking an average rate, they took an average rate instead of assessing it for each country. Guess what that means? If we went back to each country, $150 billion in savings. All of these benefits went to the wealthy instead of the people that have their house 2.5 miles away from a river who've now been flooded and lost everything in their lives. That's a problem in this country. That's a value statement. And I believe we need to have people's backs.
So I want to ask you about the new allegations against former Vice President Biden. He is facing an allegation from a former Democratic candidate who he campaigned for in 2014. Who said that Biden kissed her on the back of the head and put his hands on her shoulder and, quote, "I had never experienced anything so blatantly inappropriate and nerving before. He was there to promote me as the right person for the lieutenant governor job. Instead, he made me feel uneasy, gross, and confused." Now, former Vice President Biden is out with a statement this morning. He says, "In my many years on the campaign trail and in public life, I have offered countless handshakes, hugs, expressions of affection, support, and comfort, and not once, never did I believe I acted inappropriately. It is suggested I did so. I will listen respectfully, but it was never my intention." So what do you make of these allegations? Is this the kind of thing that could be disqualifying for Biden?
I have not read her interview, but I know the vice president addressed it there in that statement, and he will continue to address it if he decides to get into this race.
But he's also one who has said in situations like this that the default is to believe the woman, to believe the accuser. Do you believe Lucy Flores?
I have no reason not to believe her, Jonathan. And I think we know from campaigns and from politics that people raise issues and they have to address them. And that's what he will have to do with the voters if he gets into the race.
Okay. Also, you're a former prosecutor. I want to ask you before you go about the Jussie Smollett case. We've heard from Rahm Emanuel saying this was an abomination of justice, that these charges have been dropped. Former prosecutor, what do you make of it?
I don't understand why the prosecutors could not explain why they did what they did. I don't think anything prevents them. They brought these charges. It's a major public case in which major resources were expended. And I would agree with the mayor here. It makes no sense to me. You have an obligation when you represent the public to explain what you're doing. They made a decision to bring those charges and they made a decision to make those charges public. Then they need to describe why they decided to go the other way.
All right.
And they didn't do that, and I think that leaves the public hanging. Gets to one of the reasons I'm running for president. I think we need people to understand what you're going to do, stop the chaos, and just be clear with people and get things done. Whether it's about when you bring a criminal charge or whether it's about getting an infrastructure plan or making sure people have their health care. Let's be honest with people, look them in the eye, tell them what you're going to do. That's what I've done my whole life.
All right, Senator Amy Klobuchar, thank you for joining us on This Week.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.